With the bowl roughed out a couple of months ago, it's now dry and ready to return. Mounting this into the chuck can be a little tricky on the lathe. I find it easier to remove the chuck turn the bowl upside down, place the jaws inside the recess, can put firm pressure down, and tighten the chuck. Now I can mount the entire assembly onto the lathe. I'll begin by using a bowl gouge to shape it, true it up, and make smooth cuts. To do that, I'll use a shear scrape. So I'll lay the tool on the tool rest and roll the flute over about 90 degrees in the direction that I'm going to cut. Then I'm going to drag the wing across the wood, keeping the handle very low and against my body. I'll only work to the apex of the curve. The shear scraping I want to work uphill. Still not quite round. The key to shear scraping is keeping the handle low. And pulling the tool. This part of the curve is shaped. Flip the tool over the other direction. I'm going to cut from small diameter to large with the flute rolled over to about 90 degrees, dragging the wing across while I keep the handle low. Working up to the apex, the largest diameter. And if I need to work the other side, I'll flip the tool over and work the opposite direction. I've rotated the tool rest so I can work closer to the foot area. Still using the shear scrape with the flute rolled over to about 90 degrees. Keeping the handle low and dragging the wing across the wood. Aside from the smooth surface from shear scraping, a good sign that you're doing it correctly is the long, stringy shavings. Now the outside of the bowl is smooth and round. I'll use my template. Using the template as a guide, I'll note the location of the foot then use a square nose scraper to cut the foot. The key to this is I'm using a square nose scraper that is sharp on the right side. All of my cutting action is from left to right. I am not pushing the tool in. I'm sliding the tool from left to right, taking small cuts. Again, left to right. Now I can switch back to the bowl gouge, finish the cove detail on the foot. So with the tool rest repositioned, I can use the same shear scrape, dragging the wing across the rim of the bowl from the middle outward, keeping the handle low just to true up the rim. And with the rim smooth, I can begin hollowing the interior. I'm going to use the bowl gouge, a bevel rubbing cut to hollow the interior. I'm going to point the bevel on the very end of the tool where my thumbnail is touching. I'm going to point that into the bowl. I'm going to have the flute open to about 45 degrees. And in order to begin cutting, I'm going to start with the handle low, touch it to the wood, and then raise the handle. Once I get the handle up close to level, the bevel is now rubbing up against the wood that I just cut. From that point, I will put pressure forward and swing the handle. If the vibration is real excessive, I'll use my fingers on the back side, my thumb pressing down on the tool rest. Still use the same motion, raising the handle. Once the bevel is rubbing, pushing forward and swinging the handle. I'll only work the first portion of the rim, checking it with my calipers, leaving the extra mass of wood in the bottom to help support the wood that's vibrating. with a closed form. Well, you have to stop frequently and clean those shavings out. And the finished depth should be somewhere around 2 5/8. So to sand the bowl, most efficient way is to use power sanding. That's a disc mounted in a drill where the rotation is opposite the bowl. So on the outside of the bowl, it's rotating down here. I'm going to use the part of the disc that's going up. I usually decrease the RPMs of the lathe just to prevent a lot of heat buildup. I'll round over the inside edge. Then work inside. Not only is power sanding quicker, but it minimizes the scratches on the wood that you get because you're rotating the wood instead of sanding with the grain. So with a little bit of spray adhesive on the back side of my pattern, find a good location on the bowl. I want to try to do this 90 degrees to the surface of the wood. And if you find that the pattern tries to rip off with the drill bit, after I've located the center hole, I'll cut that part away. Then I'm going to rotate the bowl lock it in place there. Now I'll drill from this side to prevent tearing out the grain with the drill bit. And by drilling from both sides, I don't have tear out on either side. This is a fine tooth blade, about 20 teeth per inch, which is a little slow, but it leaves a smooth cut. Slow down as you get towards the hole. start with a coarse sandpaper. This is 100 grit. Do all the shaping with that. So when you finish sanding, all the edges are smooth and rounded over on the cutout. We'll remove the bowl from the chuck and get ready to reverse it to finish off the bottom. The first piece I'm going to make is an adapter for my live center. I've got a scrap block of wood. This happens to be poplar. I just want to mount this in the chuck and turn it into a cylinder. So I'll use my spindle roughing gouge. I'll make one end round. Put a small tenon on it to grip it in the chuck. Then flip it around in the chuck, gripping it by that tenon. And now I'll prepare to drill a hole in the end. I like just a small center point. Make sure the bit gets started in the center. Now I checked the dimensions of my live center. It's about 1.5 inches in diameter. And from the cup that it seats against, it's about 1 inch long. So I'm going to use an 1.5 inch Forstner bit, and then I'll drill about 1 inch deep. Now I've created a recess that will house my live center. I'll bring that up, tighten the tailstock in place. Since I drilled about 1 inch deep, I'm going to mark the length about 1.25 inches so I don't get into where I drilled. Now I'm just going to use a square nose scraper. You could use a parting tool or any tool for that matter. I just want to remove some waste. I want to take this down to about 1/2 inch in diameter. The dimensions here aren't critical. But I want to make this very long so it gives me room to work on the bottom of the bowl. If there's a little nub on the end, I'll just shave that off. So it's fairly smooth and flat. I've got another scrap. It's about a 4-inch diameter bowl blank, about 2 inches thick. And it's good to keep these around if you're going to make bowls from time to time and just reuse them as a jam chuck. So I'll just use the bowl gouge to create a slight dome on the end of this bowl blank. I want it to closely approximate the curve on the inside of the bowl. It doesn't have to be exact. I'm just using that shear scrape that I used to finish the outside of the bowl. It's a very gentle dome. I bandsawed this round. It's not even necessary to round this completely. It doesn't have to be round on the outside. Check my bowl on there. Feels like it mates up pretty well. You can usually tell if they rock back and forth a lot, if it feels like there's a lot of surface area there. That's a pretty good fit. Now, if I'm concerned if this were a really hard wood or if this were a very soft wood, I might worry about this damaging the bowl, or if I already had finish on it, I would put a layer of paper towels between the jam chuck and the bowl. On this bowl, the maple bowl, the poplar scrap, I don't think that I'll need the paper towels. So with the adapter on the live center here, place the bowl onto the jam chuck. Just eyeball it as straight as I can at the moment. Going to slide the tailstock up close. And put just enough pressure to hold the bowl so it doesn't fall off. Now I want to move the tool rest up close to the foot of the bowl. First I'll use my finger. That's fairly close. There's a high spot right here that touches my finger. I'll note that high spot, rotate the bowl upwards, hold the bowl against the jam chuck and loosen the tailstock ever so slightly. Give it a little tap down, then tighten the tailstock. I'm getting pretty close, it's not quite there. So now I'll put just a little more pressure with the tailstock. And you can see it's wobbling a little bit. So I'll use a pencil, the same thing as my finger, it's just easier to determine. Right down at the bottom where I'm going to be removing wood, I'm just going to slowly push the pencil forward until it touches the wood. I hear it touching right there. And then when I stop the lathe, I'll see a pencil line, which is actually in this dark area, so it is hard to see, but the pencil is touching right here. There's no pencil line visible around the rest of the foot. So this is the high spot. Same technique as before, hold the bowl against the jam chuck, loosen the tailstock ever so slightly, tap it down. And that's running real close. Now it's up to you as to exactly how close you want to get this, but this will allow us to flatten the bottom, turn away the waste, and once the bowl is stopped, you'll never be able to tell that it's off a tiny bit. Now the live center adapter, you can see, isn't running perfectly true, and that's okay. Doesn't have to be perfectly true. I'm going to adjust my tool rest here. Now I use the same shear scrape that I did on the rim of the bowl, keeping the handle low, dragging the wing across the bottom. This will smooth up the bottom, make it run true. And you'll actually want to create a slight concave so that the bowl sits good and flat on a table. I like to check that with a straight edge. And there I'm actually a little bit raised towards the center. few more of these light shear scrapes. I've got more to remove in the middle. And feathering to the outside edge. And there I can see just a slight concavity to that. That'll work. And now to clean up the very bottom, the recess where it was held in the chuck, I'm going to use the gouge, just scraping. I won't have the handle low like I'm shear scraping. I'm just going to be scraping, so the handle's going to be nearly level. Cutting near the tip, but to the left side, just a little bit of that left wing. The flute rolled almost all the way over to 90 degrees. And just light cuts. I can work down close to my little live center area. Can smooth up the bottom of this. I don't want to remove a lot from the bottom because I don't want to go to the inside of the bowl. Let's stop and check my progress. That's pretty good. Remove the tool rest, a little bit of sanding on the bottom, and then the center area, finish up by hand off the lathe.